Good morning, AP class. This is a short video on early appeasement. I hope the corona apocalypse is going well for you. I've built myself a lovely crossbow to make sure I can handle a zombie apocalypse as well. So, anyway, what I wanted to talk about today is this concept of appeasement. Part of what sets up World War II is the fact that some of these more aggressive powers, Germany, Italy, Japan, are not checked early on. Nobody bothers to step in early on and stop them. And so what I've got up here is just sort of a list of some of the incidents. But Germany, remember, the Versailles Treaty strips away territory, creates these demilitarized zones around the edge of Germany. One of the first things that Hitler does once he rearms with the new German army, very high-tech, very modern military that he creates, is to invade what's called the Rhineland. Now, the Rhineland was this demilitarized neutral zone between Germany and France that had been German territory. He basically just marches his troops in with no serious resistance and declares that this is now part of Germany again because the Treaty of Versailles was unfair to Germans. Bloody. You get the idea. The response to this is fairly muted. Why? Well, keep in mind that we just finished up a world war not that long before. We were in the middle of a vast economic depression. Most countries were affected by it to one degree or another. And the countries who would step in and deal with the situation, Britain or France, namely, just felt like they didn't want to kick up a fuss over the Rhineland. It just wasn't important to them enough. And they could see the justification that it was German territory. Maybe the Treaty of Versailles had gone a little too far, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so that's now part of Germany. One other thing that goes on at this point is there's a civil war that's going on in Spain, and Germany starts to dump a lot of money and equipment into the fascist side in Spain. A guy by the name of Franco is leading it. This turns into a nasty civil war because not only is Germany dumping their new stuff in on one side, the Russians are dumping their new stuff in on the other side, and this turns into a brutal civil war. They are still finding pits of bodies of massacred Spaniards of one side or another from this war. This is still going on, 80, 90 years later. This is a huge deal. But what it does is it gives Germany a chance to try out all of its new toys on the battlefield to make sure they work, basically. It gives Russia the same chance. You can see where this is going. But again, nobody really stepped up to call either of these two on this, okay? Or at least not effectively. So then we have Czechoslovakia and Austria. So the Germans first invade this piece of Czechoslovakia called the Sudetenland, which is a part of Czechoslovakia that is German-speaking, primarily. And this provoked enough of a response from Britain and France that they had a meeting, at which Neville Chamberlain, the head of Britain, says, fine, you can keep the Sudetenland, but is that going to be enough for you? Will you behave now? If we give you the Sudetenland, and he probably gave them the Sudetenland and said, hey, we've got peace in our time. And, within a very short period of time, Hitler decided he wanted the rest of Czechoslovakia and Austria annexed the whole lot. His excuse for this is, again, protecting the rights of German speakers that are not in Germany. Not sure their rights in Austria were terribly under threat. You could sort of make the case that they were second-class citizens in Czechoslovakia, but it was pretty limited. Why Czechoslovakia? Well, one, it's weak. It's a small country. It just can't muster a very large army. Two, Czechoslovakia also had some fairly impressive military production. They had factories that had been producing arms then as now, very good ones, and so Germany wanted a hold of that. Well, are we seeing they've now gotten themselves involved in 4 neighboring conflicts? Has anybody stopped them? No, not effectively. If nobody's stopping them, why would they stop? Not much reason to. Their next target is going to be Poland, which is when people have to, when the Allies start to wake up to the threat. But Poland and France, and very soon Germany controls the western 2/3 of the continent. Of course, the eastern third is controlled by the Russians, who also invade Poland. We like to forget that because they were on our side, but they did. Okay, so appeasement, obviously, in the case of Europe, did not work. And this was a direct appeasement. The British and the French approved taking things like the Sudetenland. Okay. Now let's talk about the Japanese side. We don't often talk about the Japanese in terms of appeasement, and it was never official. But Japan goes and takes Korea. They take Manchuria, which is sort of a quasi country north of China proper, and then move deeper into China itself. And their justification for this, of course, was that they needed resources. Now, did anybody give them permission? No. The Chinese fought them, the Koreans fought them, all that, and lost. But did anybody step in? Did a country like the United States choose to step in? Did the European powers, who all had colonies in that neighborhood, step in? No. So what happens is by the time what we think of as World War II really gets going, you have two large superstates ready and raring to go. The Japanese are suddenly able to take advantage of all the resources of Manchuria, which are significant, to get things like oil and iron and coal that they didn't have enough of in Japan. Germany is able to take advantage of a similar situation in Austria and Czechoslovakia. They're also in alliance with Italy, able to bring in resources from Italy and also Italy's new colony, Ethiopia. So what happens is we have essentially allowed the states that we're eventually going to have to go to war with to take large swaths of resources unopposed. Now, why did we do this? America was in a very isolationist place. We wanted it to be somebody else's problem. We felt like the United States had oceans between us and the combatants, and we shouldn't get involved. The Europeans, it was more of a case of exhaustion. Britain and France, the public will to go to war against Germany again was not there when it was to defend Czechoslovakia. What does your average Brit care about Czechoslovakia or a French person? That's exactly what it was. So this is sort of the story of appeasement. This is going to set up the much more significant conflict that World War II becomes. All right. Have a good. Thank you very much.